Um, I feel like I'm being stripped down and prepared for something else. Now that's maybe very personal, but I feel like the Almighty's preparing me to do something big.
For 17 centuries, there was a version of Christ so threatening to the powerful that they didn't just ban it, they hunted it. Bishops ordered the manuscripts burned. Church councils declared the writings heretical. Entire libraries were raided and emptied, and for over 1,000 years, it worked. Billions of people were born, lived full lives, raised families, and died, never knowing this account even existed. But somewhere in the mountains of northern Ethiopia, carved into cliffs that no army ever reached, monks kept writing. Night after night, generation after generation. By oil lamp, in stone chambers, in a script almost no one in the Western world could read. They weren't hiding something dangerous. They were protecting something sacred. And when Mel Gibson, the man who made the most controversial film about Jesus in modern history, discovered what those monks had preserved, he called it the most explosive religious finding of his lifetime. And for 1,500 years, while the rest of Christianity received a softer, simpler, more controlled version, those monks safeguarded the original. Now, the filmmaker who already proved he would tell the unfiltered version of this story, no matter the cost, has read what they preserved. He's investing $250 million to bring it to IMAX screens. And what Mel Gibson is creating right now inside Cinecittà Studios in Rome is a version of Jesus Christ that much of the Western world has never been told existed. You have to begin in 2004 because without what happened then, none of what follows makes any sense. Mel Gibson directed a film that every Hollywood studio refused to fund. He invested his own money. He risked his own future on it. He filmed the entire project in Aramaic, Latin, and Hebrew, ancient languages nobody had spoken in that setting for 2,000 years. No commercial polishing, no theological compromise, no consideration for audiences looking for something comfortable. The Passion of the Christ portrayed the final 12 hours of Jesus' life with an intensity that left theaters stunned. The scourging, the crown of thorns, the slow, collapsing journey to Calvary, critics called it excessive. Audiences called it the most uncompromising depiction of Christ's suffering ever put on film. It earned more than $612 million worldwide on a $30 million budget. It became the highest-grossing R-rated film in American history, a record it held for nearly 2 decades. It remains the highest-grossing independent film ever produced. The people who claimed it would destroy Gibson were wrong. The people who believed audiences didn't want unfiltered religious cinema were dramatically wrong. But Gibson never said the story was complete. From the very start, he publicly stated that The Passion told only half the story. It ended at the tomb. What happened afterward, what the earliest Christian texts claim unfolded across every level of existence, not merely within a garden outside Jerusalem, that story had never been brought to the screen. Not by any filmmaker, not through any medium, not a single time in the history of cinema. He spent the next 20 years searching for a way to tell it, and what he uncovered during those years of research led him to manuscripts that most Western Christians have never been informed even exist. During an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience, Gibson revealed that he had been developing 2 different scripts. One was conventional, structured much like audiences would anticipate. The other, in his own words, was like an acid trip. He described a journey across multiple realms, through hell, through angelic orders, through dimensions of reality that do not function according to human time. He said the film needed to start with the fall of the angels. "You're somewhere else," he told Rogan. "You're in another realm. You have to go to hell. You have to go to Sheol." He explained that the story stretches from the fall of the angels to the death of the final apostle. Not a 3-day event, but a cosmic journey. Most people listened to that interview and assumed Gibson was being dramatic. He wasn't. He was describing almost line for line what a collection of ancient texts has always claimed took place. Texts written within the living memory of the apostles. Texts quoted by the authors of the New Testament themselves. texts that were intentionally banned, burned, and removed from Western Christianity because the men leading the institution decided ordinary people should never encounter what they contained. Those texts survived in one place, Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church is among the oldest Christian institutions in the world. Christianity reached Ethiopia in the 4th century not as a colonial import, but as a direct continuation of the faith that had already spread south and east from Jerusalem within decades of the crucifixion. The Ethiopian tradition traces its roots to Acts chapter 8, where the Apostle Philip baptizes an Ethiopian royal official who was already reading Hebrew scripture. Ethiopian Christianity was recorded in Ge'ez, an ancient sacred language that became a vessel for Christian theology long before Latin ever did. It developed its traditions independently of Rome, independently of Constantinople, and independently of every council that later determined what Western Christians would be allowed to read. When the Roman Empire began centralizing control over Christian belief in the 4th century, Ethiopia remained beyond its reach. When Islamic expansion moved across North Africa in the 7th century, it formed a geographic barrier that completely separated Ethiopia from the rest of Christendom. The book, burnings, and doctrinal purges that transformed Western Christianity took place on the opposite side of a barrier those monks never needed to cross. The result is remarkable. The Ethiopian Bible contains as many as 88 books. Compare that with the 66 books in the Protestant Bible or the 73 found in the Catholic canon. That isn't a minor detail. Those are entire scriptures, complete texts that the earliest Christians read, quoted, and regarded as divine revelation. Among the writings preserved uniquely within Ethiopia are the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, and the Ascension of Isaiah. All three present a vision of Jesus that most Western Christians have never encountered. And all three contain the very imagery Gibson has spent 2 decades preparing to bring to the screen. They're questions about wealth, authority, and control, and the men who transformed the medieval church into one of the richest institutions in human history answered those questions by destroying the books that raised them. The resurrection of the Christ is not speculation. It is currently being produced at Cinecittà Studios in Rome, filmed with IMAX cameras across an 11-month production schedule. The combined budget for both installments is reported to exceed $250 million, making it the most expensive project Gibson has ever directed. Lionsgate will distribute the film throughout North America. Sony is managing international markets. Part 1 is scheduled for release on Good Friday, March 26, 2027. Part 2 follows 40 days later on Ascension Day. Sources connected to the production have confirmed that the film will feature battles between angels and demons and larger conflicts between good and evil across other realms. After 7 years of script development supported by theologians and historians for biblical and historical accuracy, Gibson and his team have created something Deadline described as unprecedented in scale. The scripts remain under strict secrecy. At the American film market, international buyers were informed they could not read them before agreeing to distribution deals. In an industry built on presentations and early script access, Gibson asked some of the most influential buyers in global cinema to commit purely on faith. Most of them did. And the vision Gibson has publicly outlined, Christ descending through realms, confronting fallen angels, breaking the barriers between heaven, earth, and hell, reclaiming cosmic authority across dimensions, does not originate from the standard Western Bible. It comes from the Ethiopian tradition. In the Tigray Mountains of northern Ethiopia, monasteries carved into towering cliff faces, accessible only by ropes and bare hands, have protected these texts for more than 15 centuries. The Garima Gospels, radiocarbon dated by Oxford University to between 330 and 660 AD, rank among the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts known to survive anywhere in the world. Full-color depictions of Christ's life have remained preserved in extraordinary condition within a remote mountain monastery that much of the Western world never knew existed, Dr. Getachew Haley spent decades cataloging Gaia's manuscripts at the Hill Museum and Manuscript Library in Minnesota. He said the greatest challenge of his career was persuading Western scholars that these were not regional curiosities. They were foundational Christian documents that the West had simply chosen to overlook. Modern digitization teams are now confirming exactly what he argued. Historians are being forced to rethink where the most advanced Christian intellectual traditions truly flourished during the first millennium. The answer may not be Rome or Constantinople, it may be Africa. Walk into an Ethiopian Orthodox church today, and you will not encounter the Jesus of Western Renaissance art. You will encounter Exeaber, Lord of the Universe, dark-skinned, deep-eyed, surrounded by gold, representing not luxury but the fire of divine presence. Fully human and unmistakably cosmic at the same time. The same figure Enoch described, the same being the ascension of Isaiah traced across 7 heavens. Not softened, not domesticated, not altered for institutional convenience. Here's what it ultimately comes down to. The Jesus that a billion people carry in their minds today was not shaped by the oldest sources. It was shaped by the sources that survived the Purge and by the artists who illustrated those surviving texts 1,000 years after the originals had disappeared. The original portrait, the one the earliest Christians actually read, the one early church fathers quoted before church councils told them to stop, the one Ethiopian monks preserved through 15 centuries of isolation while the rest of the world received a gentler, safer, more controllable version, looks very different from what many people were taught. It resembles what Enoch described, a being of absolute cosmic authority standing at the center of rivers of fire. It resembles what the ascension of Isaiah outlined, a figure moving through 7 heavens, dimming his own radiance at every level because otherwise existence itself would shatter. It resembles what Revelation preserved in the single chapter that survived the filter, the blazing, overwhelming, awe-inspiring figure John saw on Patmos and could barely describe with words. A being who chose to enter the world as an infant, who moved through every layer of reality before taking on human flesh, who died as the source of all life, and whose resurrection was not a quiet event in a Jerusalem garden, but a cosmic explosion of light reclaiming territory across every dimension at once. Mel Gibson is building that vision on IMAX cameras right now, backed by a $250 million budget, 7 years of theological research, and a release strategy aligned with the liturgical calendar itself. If he delivers what he has described, audiences in 2027 will encounter a Christ unlike any ever portrayed on screen in cinema history. A Christ closer to the Ethiopian tradition than anything Western Christianity has ever presented to the public. And once you see that, the painting hanging on the church wall may never seem complete again. The monks who continued copying those manuscripts never imagined a moment like this. They never knew that one day a filmmaker would spend $250 million to reveal to the world what they had been protecting in stone chambers carved into mountains. They simply believed it was true, so they continued generation after generation for 1,500 years. If one portrait of Christ could be hidden so completely that billions never knew it existed, what else might be sitting inside those cliffside monasteries right now waiting to be translated? What else was preserved while the rest of the world was destroying the originals? Tell me what you think in the comments. And if you want to be here when the next hidden scripture emerges, subscribe and turn on notifications because there are manuscripts in those mountains that make the Book of Enoch seem like only the first page, and we're just getting started. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Secret Narrative to unravel mysteries, learn untold tales of history, and stay in the exciting world of new discoveries.